Okay, well, good. Good evening, everybody. My name is Sultan Pfas. I'd like to welcome you to the Wurtsmith AFB Restoration Advisory Board. Kelly Driscoll, and I'll serve as facilitator for tonight's meetings. Let me just first turn to our co-chairs for the opening remarks. Dr. Catherine Bartlett.
Thank everybody for being here today and for all your participation in our activities this week.
I'll echo that and thank everyone for joining us.
Thank you very much. That second slide. So we have this hybrid format for our meetings. It's been a lot of work for a lot of people, so I appreciate all the efforts to make this happen. We have both the in-person meeting that's going on now, and then also a concurrent virtual meeting. We have a court reporter who's online and capturing the verbatim transcript of tonight's meeting. And this online meeting is also being recorded. So RAD members who are here in person, if you have a question, then you can pose that question the old-fashioned way by raising your hand. Let me just see if we have any RAD members who are joining by computer. And do you see anyone who has joined in on RAD members by computer? If we do, please just raise your hand electronically and then call on you. If you have any RAD members who are joining by telephone, then you can raise your hand by pressing *9 and lower it by pressing *9. Mute yourself by pressing *6 and unmute yourself that way. This will be a bit of a process. It'll show up on our display as a telephone number. So when I call on that, I'll call for the last 4 digits of the phone number. Then you'll get a prompt, automated voice recording saying to unmute yourself, press *6 and press *6. And then that voice recording comes on yet again, just for absolute confirmation to say you are unmuted. So I'll call on you and then I'll wait 10 seconds or so for that process to. Let's see. So thank you for your patience. The next slide, if we could, let's look at the RAB rules. We also have a copy of this presentation in hard copy for those who are here. But let me just read off the ground rules real quick. Respect one another, maintain an atmosphere of open dialogue and exchange of ideas. 2, use our time together efficiently, wisely, and respectfully. 3, speak clearly and succinctly, one person at a time. Avoid interrupting others. Number 4, listen and remain open to different points of view. Number 5, maintain a propensity for progress, prepare, discuss, document, and move forward. Number 6, share information early, openly, and honestly. And 7, accurately and objectively relate to others the discussions that occur at these board meetings. So, RAD members, do those ground rules work still? Any discussion?
Yeah, that's correct.
Great. All right. Well, so let's see. Let's move to the next slide, and we'll look at the agenda for this evening. Full night tonight. Begin with updates from our RAD members, as we typically do, and then we'll review RAB business items. So that will include RAB operating procedures and action items. After that, we'll move into the remedial investigation, interim remedial action, and soil removal action update. We have quite a bit of time reserved towards the end of the meeting to address RAB members' questions. All of those portions to that point on the agenda are for the RAB members themselves. After that, then members of the public can provide comments to the RAB in 3-minute verbal minutes. Let's see, during the technical presentation, we'll take questions, and let's now just go through and confirm that we have a forum. And so I'll just go through the list, and if you could just indicate your presence. We have Mr. Bill Gaines.
Present.
Thank you, sir. Mark Henry. Here. Thank you. Marnie Rich.
Present.
Joe Maxwell.
Here.
Let's see, has Ryan Marks joined us? Okay. How about Daniel Stock?
Here. Present.
Thank you, sir. David Wynn.
Present.
Kathy Wustbar.
Here.
Thank you. So those are all the community rep members. And now moving to the government Grad members, we have Dr. Catherine Barley. And let's see, do we have anyone representing Sable Township? Eric Strayer or others? How about District Health Department 2? Or Michigan Department of Health and Human Services? And let's see, I see we have that place with Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy.
Yeah.
Welcome. Let's go to Township.
Here.
Thank you, sir. And let's go to Wurtsmith Airport Authority.
Here.
Thank you, sir. Sorry, we sequestered you over in the corner there.
That's right.
Starting my life.
And let's see, do we have Jesse Steunenbeck here or other representatives of the Forest Service? Okay. Well, good. We do have a quorum per the operating procedures. Let's see. So let's now move to the next slide if we could. Okay, and so just a reminder here. Yes.
Sorry, we're gonna check for offline.
Yes, yeah. That was the intent there. So let me just check one more time to see if some of those who are not here in person are with us online. Do we have Ryan Mertz? And Cheryl, if you see Ryan Mertz listed, please let me know. And how about Eric Strayer or anyone from Usda Township? And if so, if you're online, please just raise your hand electronically.
Do we have any?
So
Jessica is online.
Jesse Steunenbeck is? Okay. So Jesse Steunenbeck with the USDA Forest Service is on with us. Let's see, do we have Denise Bryan with District Health Department 2? Yes. Okay, great, thank you. And do we have Penny Vidge with Michigan Department of Health and Human Services?
Yep.
Yes, great. Okay. So just one more check then. Do we have anyone from Usda Township, Eric Strayer or others? Okay, well, great. I think we have everyone but Eric Strayer and Ryan Marsh right now. Yeah. Yes.
If we could recognize a couple other community rep members in the audience and maybe online.
Sure. And Mark, would you like to do that?
Let's see, Greg.
We have Mr. Greg Schultz. Welcome. And let's see.
Don't see anyone else.
Do we have Scott Lingo online, perhaps? Or Rex Vaughn?
Yes, Rex.
Rex is with us. Okay, great.
And have we had communication tested by the people running the online
Yes, sir.
with those 4 or 5 that are on there?
We did a test overall, so we should be able to hear everybody.
Yeah, and let's just, we can just verify that right now. So let me ask Denise Bryan with District Health Department 2. Could you just say a word or two just to make sure that we are hearing you well?
Good evening. This is Denise Bryan with District 2.
Okay, and then for our AV techs, if that audio can be enhanced a bit. And Denise, I'm sorry, if you could say that one more time.
Good evening. This is Denise Bryan, Health Officer with District Health Department number 2.
Great. All right, thank you, Denise. I appreciate it. And while we're at it, let me just confirm that we have Penny Vidge as well. So there may be a bit of delay. Do we have Penny Vidge with Michigan Department of Health and Human Services?
Yes, I'm here. Sorry, I was not able to unmute myself.
No, no problem at all. Okay. Well, so it seems like we do have audio. We're able to hear folks online and they're able to hear us as well. Before moving forward, let me also just confirm that we have Quintina Snowden on the line, court reporter.
Yes,
Okay.
I'm here.
Okay, great. And Quintina, anytime that you need us to stop and clarify, please just jump in.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Well, so let's go ahead and move to the next slide then, if we could, the stakeholder updates portion. Okay, and the next slide as well. So we're now entering the stakeholder update portion of the agenda. This topic is for RAB members to provide brief updates. Let's begin with the Air Force update and Dr. Barley.
All right, so I'd like to introduce everybody to Steve Willis, who's here with us tonight. Steve, raise your hand. All right, so Steve is going to be taking over a lot of the O&M, the operations and maintenance for our daily activities, just keeping everything up and running as far as equipment goes, and the MMRP projects that I don't have time to devote to. So he's coming on board to help with workload and help balance out our program so that we keep going like we have been, right? Trying to get work done and trying to move this program forward. So Steve is new to the team. I also brought with me today Jane Ann Bond. So Jane Ann is a toxicologist for the Air Force. Her specialty is eco-risk. And she is helping out with our project. She's been helping out since the get-go, but I haven't had a chance to introduce her to the team, so she's here with me today. I've also got Janet Anderson with us, and she is our GSI toxicologist for our risk assessment and for the remedial investigation risk assessment. And Janet and Janie Ann were here earlier today. We did a training on toxicology risk assessment and what that means to all of us. So that's one of the pictures that you see up there. And then yesterday, we actually did a site visit. So for those of you that were able to join us, you guys got to go out and see some of the progress that we've been making. So we started the IRA at FTO2, and that's the picture that's up there. And then you'll see some more pictures of the dig and haul for the time critical removal action that we recently started, and we're getting ready to backfill. Any questions?
Okay. Thank you. Let's see, let's move to the next slide then, if we could, and we'll kind of go down the list. We'll start with community RAB members, and Mark, if you don't mind, maybe starting us off, and we'll go around the point.
Sure. The RAB has been working on the operating procedures that we're going to be discussing this evening. We've offered a few suggestions about revising those to include all of the RAB members, not primary and backup members. Anyway, we've gone back and forth on that. I've had a couple of technical discussions with Catherine. Beyond that, we haven't done very much. We've had a few internal meetings and discussed a few things. That's about it.
Great. All right, well, thank you for the update. Let's turn to Bill Gaines then. Any update to have, sir? Okay. Arnie, all right, thank you. Arnie, anything you'd like to share?
Just one quick thing. At the last RAD meeting, at the break and afterwards, I had a conversation with one of the Air Force contractors regarding the information repository, which is kept at the library. And that's where all the access help to the public will be there to allow the public to understand and to see more detail about the documents and actions and everything that's going on. And it was a very great conversation with Paula and Andrea. And with changes in contractors, sometimes the procedures are not maintained. I want to thank them for stepping up and making a significant effort into upgrading that information repository, which had kind of gone down in adequacy for the last 18 months, almost 2 years. So I want to thank them for that. I hope that in the near future, we can close the loop between what they've put together and what the expectations of the community RAB and the community in general might be. If there are some other things that would help the community understand, or be able to double check after a meeting like this, go to the library, check out the documents that are being discussed here. So if there's any input to us, I would hope that they would contact any of the community RAB or Mark, and we would try to work with the Air Force to to make those improvements. So I want to thank you guys for that effort.
Thank you, Arnie. Appreciate it. And let's turn to Mr. Joe Maxwell. Any updates?
Well, I just got one thing, and that is, yesterday, the EPA finally asked its science division to come up with a health advisory on PFOs and PFAs as of yesterday.
Great. All right. Thank you for that update. And let me just check one last time to see if Brian Mertz is with us on the computer or on audio. Okay, Mr. Stock, any updates? Okay, thank you. And David Nguyen?
Not at this time.
Kathy Westerbarth?
Yes. A group of community members met with the governor earlier in the month, and just to talk about the cleanup and its challenges, of course. There's some images in the back room of the foyer there that we presented to the governor also, just to kind of get her up to speed on what's going on here. We also, some members of the community launched a Great Lakes PFAS Action Network, which will attempt to assist other communities in Michigan and the Great Lakes region in terms of PFAS contamination. We're hoping that this outreach will touch some military sites in the region. So that's an effort that this community is involved. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, well, so let's move to our remaining government rep members for updates as well. Let's turn to Jesse Steunenbeck with USDA Forest Service. Jesse, any update that you have?
Hi, are you guys able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So on behalf of the Forest Service, I just want to say we appreciate all the communication from the Air Force on what's been going on and what they've all been working on. We're still in the process of reviewing the draft RIQAP that we got a couple months ago. Participated in the earlier conversation this morning regarding toxicology and the risk assessment. Appreciated that a lot. I look forward to participating that as needed from the Forest Service. So that's all I have from us.
Jesse, we appreciate that. And let's turn to Beth Place with Michigan Eagle.
Thank you. Eagle has been getting our back check on the Air Force Pfas, Aquifer. So Eagle submitted comments to Air Force back at the end of May, early June, and then Air Force responded to our comments. And we plan to get our back check on those responses by the end of November. That's our plan. We'll held a town hall meeting on November 3rd and provided several updates. That recording will be posted on MCART Wurtsmith webpage at michigan.gov/Wurtsmith shortly, if it's not there already. And we also will be updating that website in the near future with photos that we've been taking while we've been performing oversight of the PFAS RI. So the majority of the time we have a representative, either one of our contractors or us on site, primarily our contractors. And so we'll be providing that information online so folks can have access to that. And I'll shoot out an email to the Wurtsmith subscriber list when we do that. The other things that we have been doing in addition to oversight, we've been collecting quality assurance samples while we're performing oversight. And so as we are obtaining those results, we'll be sharing those with Air Force. And potentially, we're still working on the processes there to see if we'll be posting those for public as well. And in addition to that, we had, Eagle had submitted a request to Air Force, and this was something that was discussed at November 3rd town hall meeting for MCART. And we had submitted a request for an additional interim remedial action to Air Force, and we had not yet received a response on that. And that request was made back in March 23rd of 2021. And so our division director will be following up with Dr. Termath in the near future on that issue and likely submitting another request in writing as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. Okay, Mr. Michael Munson, let's go to Wurtsmith Airport Authority.
Yes, I got 5 bullet points I'd like to inform the grab of. Our airport manager has informed the board that he wants to retire, so we've been working with GovHR to looking for a replacement. Spaceport licensing activity is ongoing. It's very complicated, but we're making progress. The new hangar construction is progressing. We are, the board is looking to revise the airport layout plan due to some upcoming proposed project. And last but not least, the fence, the perimeter fence is a security measure. We've had some trees causing some issue there. So we've hired a lumbering company to trim those back so that it doesn't damage the fence.
Sorry, thank you. You are a man who knows how to give a briefing. That whole thing fit on a 2-inch by 3-inch car. That's
Yes,
impressive.
yes. Well, I have to make sure that I get it all in.
Brevity is the soul of wit.
Yes.
Great, thank you. Okay, just checking in. Do we have anyone from Osable Township who's joined since we started? Okay, let's turn to Puneet Vij with the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. Any update, Puneet?
Yes. So for the residential well resampling update in this current round 2, we completed.
Actually, Puneet, if you could hold 1 second, let me ask our AV techs to try to boost the volume there if we can.
Sure.
Stand by just 1 second and we'll get back at you.
No problem.
And I'll wait for a thumbs up from the, all right, we got the thumbs up. So Puneet, back over to you.
Okay, so for residential well resampling in the current round 2, we collected samples from 280 wells, and out of these, we had 147 non-detects and 133 detections. And out of these 133 detections, there are 19 detections that exceeded the MDHHS comparison values. And then related to deer and fish sign replacements, the revised signs replacement will be completed soon.
Okay, well,
I hope. Okay, I was just asking. I hope I was loud enough.
Yeah, and Puneet, we had a little bit of difficulty. I wonder. Let's see. Let me ask if any of our support staff can shoot Puneet an email, and or Puneet, maybe if you could just shoot an email to me. I think you have my address. If there's anything you'd like us to include in the transcript of the meeting. Nobody understood. Okay, well, thank you, Puneet. And let's turn to Mr. Cummings with Usda Township.
So thank you. And I just wanted to mention a reminder for some folks who've been on this route for a while and are new, that some years ago we had engaged in an agreement with the Air Force that we would use the storm sewer for the water coming out of the GAC plant. That we would use the storm sewer to get rid of that water that has been filtered by the GAC plant. And it's been a topic of concern for some time now. We're only in negotiations at this point after there was an agreement to actually be paid to the township for that storm sewer usage. I'm sorry, storm drain usage. And so I wanted to just find out from Dr. Varney and anyone else at the Air Force, what is the status on this negotiation? Because it's certainly in a protracted state. And we'd like to know when this is going to come to a close.
So we are currently working with the township, as you know. Tammy, myself,
yes,
and Ann have all met several times. We've talked about how we can partner together to make everything work better. We do not expect to be using the stormwater for forever, but we do want to help fix the solution. So we are working with our leadership to figure out what we can do and how to move forward. The township did provide us a letter, and that is something that is undergoing review right now so that we can figure out the best path forward. So we are making progress. We're not stopping.
Good, and thank you for that. I don't know what caused the change after the agreement occurred, but I appreciate knowing that something is in progress. And so we don't need to go into all that here. That's not the purpose of this meeting, but I appreciate your answer on the spot.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, sir. And let's see, over to Denise Bryan with Department of Health, District 2.
Local public health does not have any updates this evening, but thank you.
Okay. All right, well, thank you very much. And I see you were one step ahead of me. Let's go ahead and move to that next slide, RAD business update. So we're now in the RAD business portion of the agenda. And I think there's one more slide in this section, if I remember correctly. Yeah, so we'll talk operating procedures and action items as well. As Mr. Henry mentioned, the RAD members have been looking into possible changes to the operating procedures. The operating procedures, again, kind of serve as the constitution for the group. They tell us our procedures and our policies and how we run meetings and so on. And I think we are ready to vote to adopt those new operating procedures. So we would need concurrence from both the co-chairs and a majority of the RAD members. We have, let's see, that would be over 51% of RAD members present, so that would be 8 of us. Let me just first turn to the co-chair, see if there's anything else you'd like to say before we have that vote by show of hands. Anything you want to discuss?
We've been going back and forth on this. The last revisions were made today. But looking over those revisions, I have no heartburn with it. I think we can move forward.
Right. Okay.
I'm impressed by, the amount of work that went into these and Mark's due diligence, making sure that everything that we are doing now is actually incorporated into these procedures. So this is how we have been operating in many respects.
And Dr. Farley, you emailed these out to all the RAD members earlier today, and they're also in hard copy now. So let me just see if we can go ahead and can we move forward with a vote by show of hands? Yes, please. Go ahead.
I just like to request that the co-chairs maybe just touch on some of the things that were changed from the prior.
Yeah, I haven't seen an email today.
Okay.
Well, I don't mean necessarily what the final version is, but from the first version to this version, what, just to give people an idea of what was updated.
So the big things, big rocks for me at least, were the communication's been added in. So the emails, the updates, the moving forward as a team together is all in there now. Also, let's see, we also updated all the links so that what goes up on the AR is incorporated and what goes on to the website is incorporated on there and provides those links as what they are today.
Mark, anything else come to your mind with major changes?
The original operating procedures that the RAB was utilizing had the whole notion of primary and backup numbers. And that has been removed from this version. All of the RAB membership will, in essence, be primary members now. Yes. The original operating procedures were crafted around the situation at Wurtsmith. These operating procedures were originally crafted for Pease Air Force Base, and they were modified to work here at Wurtsmith. And in comparing the two documents, this current document seems to cover all the bases that the original one did and fix that primary membership thing. There were a few things that were left out, but I don't see them as being consequential.
Kathy, does that address the question? Yeah. Any other questions from the RAD members on this?
I just learned this today, that was a confirmation from Catherine that the copying or using P's RAB operating procedures that was approved in 2017 is now a template. And it was mentioned 3 years ago that the Air Force wanted to have a more standardized review of operating procedures, but it never moved past that. So I hope that if that is what's happening across the 9 RABs in the BRAC and maybe even the active, that a communication will happen and you'll bring some of that information to us, how that's being implemented across all of the Air Force, at least, contamination sites where there are RABs, so that we don't fall behind and that we're being recognized and treated in the same fashion. So I trust that that's going to happen. So I'm going to vote yes.
Well, good, Arnie, you kind of beat me to that. Let me just ask, first we'll do it with the RAB members who are present in person here. I'll ask by show of actual physical real life hands. Do you agree to adopt these RAB operating procedures? So RAB members, do you agree to adopt these RAB meeting procedures? Let's see, please keep those up. Well, yeah, actually there's not a restriction in the current RAB operating procedures. Yes. Yes.
Might as well.
Okay. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay. And so I have 10 of the 11 of us who are here in person voting for that. Let me just confirm then. Puneet, do you vote to adopt the RAB operating procedures?
Yes.
And I'm sorry, can you say that one more time, Puneet?
Yes.
Okay, great. So that's 11. Thank you. And to Denise Bryan?
Yes.
Okay, that's 12. And then USDA Forest Service, Jesse Steunenbeck. And Jesse, are you able to respond? Do you support adopting the new operating procedures, Jesse?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so we received 13 affirmative votes. We needed 8, which was over 51% of the RAB members. So these new operating procedures are adopted. Co-chairs, would you like to go ahead and sign these now?
Mark, you want to sign?
Sure.
Copy for you and copy for me.
Thank you all very much. Bear with us for those on the phone while the actual signing occurs. Congratulations. I feel like you have to keep a commemorative pen. But it was yours to start with. So. Okay, well, so now that we have new operating procedures established, AFCEC CIB can proceed to appoint Rex Vaughn, Greg Schultz, and Scott Lingo as community RAB members. Co-chairs, anything to say on that front?
Welcome aboard.
I am working on the paperwork. So thank you guys.
Well, good. Well, congratulations. Yeah. Okay, let's see. Let's move to action items real quick. Action item. So the co-chairs met following the last RAB meeting and reviewed action items. There are currently 13 open action items, and I believe the standard process is for the co-chairs to meet again following this RAB meeting and review action items as well as look at future agenda items and so on. Any discussion that co-chairs would like to have about action items at the moment?
Nothing comes to mind.
Okay, well, so before we move off of the RAD business update, any other RAD business that we should discuss before we move on to our presentations? Okay. Well, good. That was a lot. Thank you all for your patience with that, especially in this hybrid format. Let's move to that next slide then, if we could. And we will move into the airport technical presentation. And Paula Bond with Aerostar SES will present. And Paula, you can work from whichever location you'd like.
we're experimenting with some new organization to try to get everybody situated, so.
This
is on.
Also, just a note to all the support staff, if there's any adjustment you need us to be making, feel free to just jump up.
I think I'll stand over here. Can you guys hear me? Is this on? Check. Okay. Hopefully everybody, don't look at me, look at the slides, but I'd like to thank everybody for coming out tonight. It's kind of a cold and miserable night here in Oscoda, but thanks everybody for joining us online to celebrate some, we've got some great news and successes to talk about tonight as far as progress on site. So I'll just kind of give everybody an update on where we are on the RI field work, the IRAs that we're working on, and then the soil removal action that we just completed. So if you guys could move to the next slide for me. So under the RI process, so I'll just give you a quick update here on the slide, and you can see that the RI scoping work is complete. The UFP QAP is still ongoing. We're still working with Eagle on finalizing that document. The risk assessment work plan is still ongoing. We're still working on that with Eagle as well. The field data collection is ongoing, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that as we go along. And just to kind of let everybody know, I think most of you that came in, we have some posters set up in the back of the room. Some of the data that we've collected so far during the RI field work is displayed on the poster. So we'll be happy to talk with anybody about that data or information that we presented on the posters after the RAB as well. And then the last thing on this slide is the RI report. Obviously, we haven't finished the field work, so we're not to the RI report yet. And as we move through these different tasks, the colors on the bubbles will change to designate ongoing complete activities and as we move forward. Next slide, please. So we'll talk a little bit about the IRA for FTO2 at Clark's Marsh. The folks that were out yesterday that did the site walk with us were able to see some of the progress that we've made out there. We have started prepping the site for the addition, for the building expansion, for the pretreatment system that's going to be installed out there. So we've got that kicked off. Obviously, everyone knows it's wintertime, not the best time to start a construction project, but we're moving forward and trying to get that expeditiously moving forward as we can to get as much done before the weather turns really cold on us. But we're excited about that. So that you can see, I've got some photos of that here coming up too, but so the scoping is complete. The proposed plan is complete. We've already been through this process. The ROD is complete. The remedial design is complete. The work plan is complete. So all that's left now is to implement that action. So all of our circles are, all of our bubbles are blue on this slide. Next slide, please. So Van Etten Lake it's a little bit different story. That one is running a little bit further behind than the Clark's Marsh, still on schedule. But the IRA scoping is complete, the proposed plan is complete, and we've got a couple of other following tasks, the interim record of decision, the remedial design, and the IRA work plan. Those are all undergoing Air Force review currently. So we hope to get those over to Eagle very soon. And the schedule for Van Etten Lake is to start that work later in the spring once all of these documents are signed and we get approval of those to move forward. Next slide, please. So just a little more detail on the fieldwork update for the RI. Like I said, we have posters in the back that kind of demonstrate or illustrate some of the data that we've collected so far. Step one in our field work process was to sample existing groundwater wells at the site that had not previously been sampled for PFAS. We started that back in July. We finished a few weeks ago in October, and we sampled 96 existing wells out there that hadn't been sampled for PFAS before. So we fed that data into the next step, number two, I'm out of whack. Step number three, but step number two was the soil sampling. So we have been soil sampling out there since August. We've collected over 1,000 samples from 231 locations. We are very close to being finished with the soil sampling, and we hope to finish that up in the next week or so. But the data that we collected from the groundwater well sampling is feeding into step three, our vertical aquifer sampling locations. And to decide finalized locations for those where we may want to go, we completed that back in September. with SPP meetings with Eagle, and we have began the Pfas sampling in September. And so far, we've sampled 16 locations, and we've collected in the neighborhood of 100 samples so far. All of our RI field work is still ongoing. The Pfas sampling, we're continuing. Right now, our plan is to work probably up through Christmas. If we get weather that's good enough, we'll keep going, but we'll just kind of have to wait and see on that. But right now, the plan is to continue Pfas sampling through December. We won't be finished with the field work at that point if we stop for winter weather. We will still have work to be done next spring when the weather clears up for us. So, next slide, please. So I'll focus a little bit on FTO2 at Clark's Marsh. Like I said, we did the site walk yesterday, and I've got a couple of figures here that kind of show where the site is today for those of you that weren't able to come out. But site work began on October the 14th, and then we started grading and just preparing the site for the concrete slab for the addition. We got the underground utilities installed out there. We got mechanical and electrical. And in one of the photographs here, you can see some of the plumbing that's sticking up. Those are the pipings from the extraction wells that we're going to put in. That's where they're going to come into under the slab. And we installed a few of the performance monitoring wells for the treatment system that we knew the locations where those were going to go. So we're trying to get as much work as we can done this year. So that's kind of where we are with FTO2 at Clark's Marsh. Next slide. So the next thing that in the field work that we're looking at is, this is really exciting, I think, is the soil removal action at FTO2. So we just completed this last week. We started out there on October the 13th. We have removed 24,000, and I think I have this on the next slide, but over 24,000 tons of soil. We've got some pictures here on this slide that you can kind of see where the fire training area was. And there was a concrete pad that was at the fire training area, and that was removed back in the spring. So when that pad was removed, it kind of provided an opportunity for that exposed soil to increase leaching from the surface down to the groundwater. So that was the rationale for implementing this soil removal action. Next slide, please. So like I said, over 24,000 tons of soil we removed from FTO2. The soil was transported to the U.S. Ecology Hazardous Waste Landfill down in Belleville, Michigan. But I do want to make the important distinction that even though we are transporting this soil to a hazardous waste landfill, this waste is not a hazardous waste, but we are storing it or disposing of it in a hazardous waste landfill. And we're doing that just as a conservative approach at this point, because that landfill is made for higher toxicity chemicals so that they don't leach into the groundwater. So that's kind of why we chose that method. Next slide, please. Oop. Let's go back. You went just a little bit too far. I was almost finished.
Well, we're waiting for a reset. So the big reason why so the cap came off, the pad came off, which allowed us to actually do sampling. The sampling showed us high concentrations and the probability of leaching. The probability of leaching and the proximity to Clark's Marsh was the reason for doing the time critical removal action this year, before we have snow and everything else going right through all of that. So we pulled off in 30 days, we removed a concentration equal to or greater than what we've removed from the FTO2 treatment system that's been operational since 2015. So that's rough calculations at this point.
Yeah, so the excavation, we finished excavating, like I said, last week. We are ready to backfill, and we'll start doing that either later this week or early next week. As most of you know, this is hunting season, and there's not a lot of work getting done up here right now. So we'll start backfilling the hole, and we hope to have that done in just a couple of weeks. So that action will be done. Just here's some photos of the excavation. Some of you got to see that yesterday, but it is it's an impressive excavation, and we did a lot of work in a very short period of time, and that's thanks to a great team of people working on that. So I think that's a great success for the Air Force, and we're happy to be a part of it. And I think that is all I have. Next slide, maybe the schedule. So this is just the updated fieldwork timeline that I present at all of the RAB meetings. This one's a little difficult to read on the slide there because it's just a little faded, but everything we added the removal action on here. Clark's Marsh, FTO2 at Clark's Marsh IRA has been started, like I said, so that is on the schedule. Van Etten Lake at Ken Ratliff Memorial Park, that IRA we have moved that, pushed that to start in the spring after those documents that I mentioned get signed. So we'll start that off in the spring, but everything will be done by the end of next year, by the fall of next year for the IRAs and the RI field work. And that is all I have.
All right, so any questions from the RAB members?
I've got a whole list. Can I start?
Sure.
Anybody else?
Thanks, Paul. First question, you said the FTO2 is on schedule, so all the equipment has all been purchased, everything's.
Yeah, we've got everything the building is already there. We've already purchased the building. It's
You
there.
don't foresee any lead time issues with?
No, everything has been ordered. So we're, like I said, doing this in the winter was not our original plan. We would much rather have started it, back in the summer, but everything has been ordered. It's on its way. So we're going to be working through the winter to get that, everything in there and get it finished.
Air Force IRA schedule. The initial schedule that you guys had back in September showed a start date of 9/1 with a completion date of July or August 22nd. This new schedule now shows 11/17 with a finish date of 10/22. Before it was 9 months, now it's 7 months.
Is that you're looking at Clark's Marsh?
No, that's the Air Force Beach.
Oh, Van Etten Lake.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Is that, it looks like it slipped out because obviously, you guys had some.
Everything took a little bit longer, so I was going for best case scenario. This is me. I push everybody as hard as I can, and I apologize to Paula all the time because I push until the fact that we just can't do it.
Okay.
So I pushed and pushed and pushed, and that's one project that we just couldn't get done by winter, so.
Okay, that's fine.
It'll start next field season.
My question is, you initially had it laid out for 9 months.
right.
The new
So
schedule now shows 7 months.
right.
Is
So
that
now,
because you purchased equipment?
yeah, things are ready to go. We're lining everything up, and because
I
we're
assumed
starting earlier in the spring. So before we had it laid out on the schedule, a lot of that work was being done in the winter, which just slows things down. So now it will all be done in better weather work, so we can compress that
So
schedule.
now
and our
you
materials
feel
are-
comfortable with this current schedule you have?
Yep, I do.
Okay. Clark's Marsh rod, you stated in here that the rod is complete,
It is, yes.
but there are still a lot of unresolved issues, between Eagle and Air Force. When do those issues get resolved? Is
Air
that the-
Force, first of all, Air Force is the lead agency.
Yep.
We went through, we resolved as much as we possibly could.
Okay.
And we got it signed so that we can move forward and start work.
Okay.
So that's where we are with it. We will continue to answer Eagle's questions and do what we need to do to make sure that we're trying to build that relationship and gain some more consensus as we continue to work projects together.
Okay, I mean,
But the rod is finished. the iRod.
so those unresolved issues could remain unresolved.
I'm expecting still a letter from Eagle providing their concurrence and whatever else, because we did come to an agreement at the end, right, Beth?
Yeah, so we have a meeting on Friday to discuss one of the main issues still outstanding from the rod. So you do have a signed rod there. Eagle hasn't provided our concurrence letter yet. And we do have that meeting on Friday to discuss the threatened and endangered species with the Clark's Marsh IRA. And so I'm hoping from that meeting that issue can be resolved. And that's really one of the main issues. The other kind of outstanding comment was on performance monitoring. And the performance monitoring comments that we also made when the FTO2 system was installed. And so Air Force did, make changes based on Eagle's comments, but there are still some that were not incorporated. And I figure those are just going to be documented that they weren't incorporated. But the state threatened and endangered species, I imagine, will be resolved.
Okay, so both of you are kind of in agreement with what needs to be done.
Yeah, we both want to move this project forward.
Okay. All right. ARARs. Is ARARs going to be included as part of?
They were in the IROD and they were sent out to everybody in that document.
Okay.
So that's discussed and determined by our lawyers. It does not happen at our level. They came to consensus and Eagle provided us a letter, or your AG provided us a letter. And that's what finalized. So we could move forward and start work on the 11th to start mobilization right after signature.
Okay.
Has that letter, could you reference that in an email you sent us about a month and a half ago? Has that letter from the AG to the Air Force been shared publicly?
I can share it.
Okay.
I was waiting for Beth's letter, from Eagle's letter as well, to be able to put them together. But
In a minute or less, what did it allow you to do? What did they say?
it's allowed us to, it was more or less agreement on the ARRs. That's what it was. So
Well,
we
it's
can move
pretty
forward.
generic because
That's it.
agreement on the list of the ARAs that they submitted to you, you've now accepted that same list,
That are part of the IROD, yes.
including the 5 new PFASs?
No,
No.
that is not
Okay,
what we're in the ARRs.
but
It's
it
in most of
does
the
for
documents.
the PFO or PFAS. You agreed to that.
It's all there in the IROD. You can read it. I sent out that.
And we
to
haven't
everyone.
received that yet. It
Okay.
just
Yeah,
happened.
you
Okay.
have done the IROD,
You've agreed. Okay.
yes.
All right. I'm gonna, the FTO2 soil removal, I wanna make a comment. I looked at what you've got over there. To me, first off, I wanna thank you and your entire crew for motivating and for initiating that removal. When I look at that chart over there and I see the high levels of PFAS, and we've always everybody in this room has always talked about, get rid of the source, get rid of the source. That to me is, in 30 days, you guys have done a heck of a job getting rid of what I'm considering a source. And I want to know, when is the next hole going to be done?
I'd like to know that too, sir.
Who do we have to talk to get the next hole done?
So what we need to do is we need to keep working on our programming and planning, and we'll do that. And I'm glad that you support it.
I mean,
So
whatever this group, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, whatever we need to do as a community to help push this along, to get rid of all these sources, amen. I'm ready for that.
we got
I
moved.
mean, if we got to get a hold of President Biden, we'll do that. I mean, I'm that serious. I mean, this is great stuff. This is stuff that should have been done years ago, but I'm really, really appreciative of the fact that you guys have took the initiative in order to do it. And like I said, I mean, I can see by the graphs that are out there, there are other holes that need to be done. So kudos.
Thank you.
My last one is the latest residential well sampling that Paneet just talked about. There were approximately 114 wells that showed detection, of which 19 were over the MCLs. Paul, I would hope that you, Eagle or MDHHS, would share that data and those locations with you so that you guys can understand where those detections were. Because I'm going to say this again, my guess is they're on the southeast part of the lake. So it would be nice for Paneet, if you're listening, I would sure hope that you would share that data as well as a map or something to the Air Force that shows that information.
Yeah, Eagle has been really good about providing that data.
Okay. My last question, BCT meeting minutes. I have no July, no August, no September, and no October. I'm finding out that we can sit in these RAB meetings, and I can find out more information from the RAB meeting than I can from the BCT minutes because they're so outdated. Where's these sit?
Dave. So July, we had the August meeting in September, and then we had the October meeting at the end of October.
Okay.
And those are all still with me. There was difficulty getting access to the recordings again.
Okay. So when would you have them so where they can be seen?
I can follow up with an email to the RAB. Again, we don't have any issue of, releasing the draft minutes. That's not Eagle's issue. We're not holding the draft ones. That's.
Okay, I'm just.
Yeah.
I mean, that information is what the community gets to see what's going on.
Well, I understand, and it's not as, it's not just as simple as, oh, well, we'll lead on those. There's a lot of things behind that.
I
that we have
understand
to
that.
make sure those decisions
Recordings,
are.
making sure everything's correct. I understand that. But again, meeting minutes, I find that this information is, I mean, every time I read, I mean, I faithfully read those every month.
Mhm.
When I find that information, I've already heard about it in a RAB meeting or some other type of meeting. And
Yeah,
I would really like to, just for me, speaking myself, I would really like to see that information as quickly as possible.
yeah, I have a few things to say to that, and so I can understand, and I can get back to the RAB with a date on when those particular ones will have our reviews done. In the past, Catherine proposed potentially having, transcripts done from the BCTs. Eagle's not opposed to that. I think it'll make it easier, and there'll be less of the tone and potential slant to some of those minutes if they're going to be relied on for decisions. So
I mean,
that's
if they're in
one
your
thing.
court, that's, just, I'd like to, I think the group would like to know, when can we see them? That's, if you tell me 2 weeks, 3 weeks, then that'd be great. Just
Yep.
keep it up.
And then I guess the other thing I wanted to say to that, sorry, was that you guys are receiving a lot of the information at the same time that we are now. So it's not necessarily that some of the information's been shared with us already. In some cases, that is true. But a lot of the information you guys, like it's an email to me, a minute later, it's an email to you.
Mhm.
So there's not really a lot.
But that doesn't help the community. Right. That's all I'm saying. I mean, those BCT minutes are available for the community to see what's going on in Oscoda and around surrounding areas. Yeah, I get the email, this team gets the email, but the community doesn't know. And that's what we're here to do. We're here to support the community.
Okay, and just a note there. So Beth, I've captured an action. Email RAD members to advise when recent BCT meeting minutes will be released. Does that work for you to have that action?
It's when I will provide our comments back to Air Force. Eagle does not release them to the public. That's Air Force. We do post them on our website once Air Force is finalized. Could you also capture an action item if the BCT minutes can be transcribed? Because then that'll really alleviate this whole issue, and they can be provided to the community in real time.
Will do. And then also, I did, just to go back a bit, I had an action, send RAD members the Michigan Attorney General's letter concerning applicable, relevant, and appropriate requirements. Is that something you could provide as well? Thank you. Okay, well, so we're still in the phase of questions related to the briefing here. Let me just check in because I know it's challenging to participate on this virtually. So let me make sure and reach out to Denise Bryan, Puneet Vij, and Jesse Steunenbeck to see if y'all have questions on the presentation so far. Any questions? Any questions or hands raised electronically or in the cyber universe? So continuing on then with RAB members here present in person, any questions on the presentation so far? Yes.
From my end, I want to give a big picture on the timing of this soil removal project. Is awesome. You know, we are very, very excited about that. From my understanding, this was recommended more than a decade ago, and so it's my concern that it took so long to get this done. And I'm wondering, Catherine, if you have any insight for us on why, when you came, this suddenly got done, and why your predecessors did not do this.
I have experience moving projects forward, so I do need the community support, and it's a team effort. We all need to be in lockstep and working together. So the reason why we were able to do the time critical is everything just fell right into step. It was good timing. It was a good community effort. You guys were asking the right questions at the right time, and we were able to start the sampling and get the ball rolling. And hopefully we can continue to get the ball rolling as we move forward through the circle process, as well as move forward in IRAs, right? So We just gotta keep going.
Hey, Tim, this is Sharon Brzezinga.
Yes, go ahead.
I'm
Sharon.
sorry, Catherine. I didn't mean to cut you off. When you're done, no, I think Catherine's still speaking, though. Let me let her finish.
Okay.
Go ahead, Sharon.
Sorry about that, Catherine. What I wanted to say was the reason this soil removal was done is there are rules and regulations about when you can do a removal action, which is what was done for this soil removal at FT002. The only reason the Air Force was able to do that was because the concrete cap or cover was taken off as part of the other work that was going out at FT002. When that was done and the soil was sampled, we realized we had a scenario, as the time critical removal action memo talks about, that there was an increased risk of contamination now getting into the groundwater because the cap had been removed. That was the driver for this removal action. It's not as if we can just go around and start digging up a lot of contamination all over wherever on the base. There has to be a driver to take action this fast. This one had it. Maybe we'll have that somewhere else on the base. Maybe we won't.
But as we move forward through the CERCLA process, we will get to the FS, and that will be something that we need to consider is, do we do more soil removal? Or do we implement another technology? And we will get there. So capture, and that's what we're using the IRA source for capture. And then cleanup.
Could I ask Sharon what is her role?
Oh, go ahead. Sharon, you want to explain your role?
And so
Sorry, I had to
Sharon,
unmute myself. Yeah, I should have
go ahead.
identified myself. And I'm an attorney and I advise the Air Force on restoration matters at Wurtsmith Air Force Base.
I wanted to add, and maybe I wasn't clear, but I think that the recommendation in the past has been to remove that cap specifically. So, again, I'm just not sure why that part was done also.
So the cap was removed for fuels. It was a 2017 work plan. When I was coming on board, it was already in motion and going. So once the cap was removed, we needed to know what was under it. So we were able to sample and get everything removed. And I'm extremely thankful that we had such a great contracting team because we were able to pull it off in a couple of weeks as far as getting the contract in place and everything else. And that also leads to, Aerostar. Aerostar was able to turn around in the RFP really fast, and US Ecology was able to step in and get the work done. So, I mean, it's a team effort.
I have one more question actually regarding the soil removal project. I think I had asked for clarification on the hazardous site that it was being transported to and the delineation between areas in the hazardous waste, dump areas, and if they were above certain levels in terms of the Pfas contamination. Well, was it separated at some point, or did it all get to go into the one location, or can you expand on that?
Yes, yeah. So when we did our initial assessment of the soil out there, we did kind of a vertical profile to see, and we knew that the higher concentration material was in the top, 5 feet. So based on all the data we collected, we selected the top 5 feet, which was everything over 1,000. And that was a higher concentration that went into a different sale at the landfill. Everything less than that and lower depth, lower concentration than 1,000, that went into a different area of the landfill. It's the same landfill, just a separate area. And Mark, where are you? And Mark is, I'm going to put him on the spot. He's with US Ecology. So if you want anything else, do you want to add to that?
No, we have a state, we can provide anyone who wants to go a little bit more about the manual.
Thank you.
Does that address the question?
That did, yeah. Thanks.
Tim Cummings, did you have a question? I see we have let me go to a question from Rex Vaughn real quick, and then I'll turn to you, sir. So Rex Vaughn, who's in the process along with others of becoming Grad members, has a question. Have any simulations been performed that estimate the impact that the soil removal will have in the shrinking of the plume flowing into Clark's Marsh?
That is a really good question. And we haven't really done simulations of what the impact is going to be from removing that soil. We haven't done any modeling of that yet. But obviously, now that the soil is gone, we're going to start really closely looking at the extraction well data from FTO2. Of course, it's going to take some time for any action that's taken that far up gradient to show an impact down where the extraction wells are or the other monitoring wells are that are down closer to the treatment system itself. But yes, when those wells are sampled, we're definitely going to be looking to see what impact this has had on. We haven't done modeling though to look at that. Yeah, Mark.
There are a bunch of monitoring wells immediately down gradient of the excavation. Do you have any plans of monitoring those periodically to see the short-term impacts?
We don't have a plan to do that. I know that under other sampling programs that are going on out there, there are some annual sampling that takes place out there at FTO2. Like I said, we don't have a specific plan just for the dig and haul, but as data is collected for all these other activities, including the RI, all of that data will be looked at just to see what the impact is. But we're not focusing on that, the impact of that immediately right away by developing a plan for monitoring and looking at that.
Yeah, the key thing is that the time critical action was a time critical action. It was literally to remove the area directly under the pad and a small area right adjacent because we were seeing signs of leaching. So we removed it as quickly as possible. Now we're back to the RI. We've got to look at how this will impact the RI and moving this site into a feasibility study because it is time to start looking at that.
Mr. Maxwell had a question.
Something I don't understand. And then that's in this statement that says PFAS impacted soils are not a hazardous waste. Somehow or other, that doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, so there is, and it gets very complicated very quickly, but in short, there's a difference between contaminated, where you have chemicals that are in a soil or groundwater above a certain concentration or any concentration. You can call that contaminated. Hazardous waste has a very specific meaning, a regulatory meaning. And the definition of a hazardous waste is determined through various processes, testing and different things. So PFAS currently is not regulated as a hazardous material by the EPA. So when we talk about hazardous waste in a landfill, those are hazardous waste that have been designated that. And I don't, it has a very specific legal meaning, hazardous waste, and PFAS are not designated as that. I'm fumbling all over myself with that, but we can, and maybe Beth, I don't know, from a state regulatory perspective, maybe you can explain it.
I mean, I think you did a fine job of explaining it. I mean, really it comes down to how EPA defines those.
Yeah.
And from our perspective.
Yeah. So you can have contamination without being hazardous, I guess is, yeah.
They're trying to move you so you're not right in front of that camera. They have two cameras going. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yes.
Let's go ahead and view the back of my head.
And let's move to Arnie Ridge for a question.
Well, it's just a great comment and some information that we learned yesterday in that tour that the public may want to know. And it was about the 46 pounds and the 6 million and the comparison of the removal that you just did to the 6 years of FTO2.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the mass, we did just a quick calculation based on the data that we have, the mass of PFAS that was removed from, or I think we just did PFAS and PFOA, right, Jim? The mass of PFAS and PFOA that we removed in the soil from the excavation versus the mass of PFAS and PFOA that have been removed with the treatment system that's been pumping for 6 years. And the volumes came out to be very similar. So just looking at total mass of material that has been addressed at the site.
46 pounds.
Yeah, 46 pounds roughly at both the treatment system and the excavation.
So Arnie, that's not including any of the precursors that could turn into PFAS. That's not including any of the other compounds or the fuels or anything else that was at that site. So, I mean,
it was more significant than
it was
that.
more significant.
Right. Yeah. We just calculated PFAS and PFOA. And like we said, at the sidewalk, when you think 46 pounds, well, maybe that doesn't sound very impressive. But when you're counting it, 1 nanogram at a time, that is a lot. So,
Not in
So,
the Olympic sense of people.
I did fill up a lot of Olympic-sized swimming pools.
Yes. it would.
Other questions from the RAD members?
With the question, you know, as somebody who's been sitting there watching this for the last 5 years or so, I was attending the BRAC meetings before the township was asked to stop attending. And one of the comments and observations that I had at the time of watching these BRAC meetings take place back 5 years ago was that the circular process proceeded at a pace that was much slower than Mother Nature. And at that point, I commented and laid down a point that I think is kind of funny, and I'm not tooting my horn because it turned out to be a catastrophe. And I said, by the time you guys figure out where to perimeterize the problem, it will have already exceeded it. And at that point, just a few months later, all of a sudden we heard about Mennonite Lake, and we heard about private wells being contaminated. So to point, you know, Dave Lynn's got a great point that we're very happy to hear about the removal of the soil. And it is wonderful that we've made this progress. And to Kathy's point, it's concerning that we did talk about this 10 years ago. But the big concern here is for us to continue the accolades, this has to maintain the speed of progress. And when we hear about other folks, the lady on the call here who's not present, name I've forgotten, you know, when we talk about other places that may or may not actually require soil removal because it hasn't been deemed necessary yet, it lays down the concern that I've had now that overshadows this solution. We better not be waiting for another 5 or 10 years to figure it all out.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
so time critical reaction was time critical. It would have overwhelmed our system. I'm just being straightforward, honest, as a scientist, it would have overwhelmed our system. We had to react. We have 2 IRAs in place right now. We need to make sure we have full capture. That's why we're doing the RI right now. We're trying to get as much data as we possibly can before winter, and then we will continue as soon as we have good season again to continue.
Yeah.
That data is going to drive decisions to make sure we have capture, to make sure we have containment. As long as we have containment, we will continue through that circular process to the Pfas, to the proposed plan, to the ROD, to where we can make decisions, have that remedial design, where we can do either excavation or something even better. Right now, CERTA BSCCP has several different technologies that should be viable for this cleanup effort. It might be even better for us than just digging and hauling or pumping and treating. Pumping and treating is going to take a long time.
Yes, it does.
Now that we removed a big source, I expect it to take a lot less because we don't have the continuous movement, continuous leaching in that area. But we will continue. I mean, you've got the best team I've got the best team with me, so.
Well, and quite frankly, as Kathy said, we've been through a few folks who have been in your position. You've done more in the short time you've been here than anybody we've seen prior. I'm at least encouraged by what you've been able to produce. So I thank you personally and on behalf of Excavator Township.
Thank you, sir.
Well, good. Mr. Rich.
Beth suggested an action item regarding the BCT transcription of it, so forth, correct?
Yes, I captured that.
Right.
Determine whether BCT meetings can be transcribed.
Right, but in the event that transcriptions are not approved, can I modify that action item to include that Air Force and Eagle will come up with another process so that we get timely release of the BCTs?
Yeah, so transcription is going to require a contract mod, most likely. So I do need to figure that out, if we can do it and what that will take.
Right.
As far as developing a better process, Beth, I think we're open to it, right?
So just add it into one AI so that we don't have to discuss this again. You'll come back to us. The status. Great, thanks.
Okay, so determine whether BCT meetings can be transcribed, consider the best process by which to release BCT meeting minutes in a timely fashion. Capture the gist. Okay, other questions from the RAD members?
Can I add a comment related to the same issue? One of the more valuable things that I find with the BCT minutes are the presentations that are attached to that. If the presentations themselves are non-contentious, could those be distributed early?
So that's just something that we've been working with. And part of what I'm hoping Steve will be able to help with is that there haven't been a lot of presentations. It's been a lot of document reviews since I've been on board. And we really haven't been making any real decisions. So what we've been talking about is to come up with something that we're trying to work towards. Making an agenda for that, making a slide deck for that, then putting that out to Eagle for them to review for a couple of weeks, and then us getting together and talking it through during a BCT, so that you guys have time to review and we have time to actually make decisions to move the program forward. So I do think that that's something that we can do. We're still working through the logistics.
Okay.
Can I ask Sharon to clarify? I could not hear half of, my hearing's not great either. But when Sharon, are you still there?
Yes, I'm still here.
Oh, okay. When you talked about the critical action for the soil removal and the pad, you talked about how that was done. And you mentioned FTO2. I'm hoping that you were not referring to the discussion we had at the last meeting about the FTO2 original GAC unit and rod that was, I believe, done. You weren't tying those two together, were you? That makes sense.
I think you're asking a technical question about what drove the removal of the cap.
Well, the question I asked last meeting was the original GAC unit FTO2, should it be part of the fourth, fifth, 5-year review? And there was a big discussion about that, and it was kind of confusing. I reread twice the 11 pages in the transcript on that dialogue back and forth. And I'm just want to clarify that your discussion of the time critical for this soil removal has nothing to do, just clarify that it has nothing to do with the GAC unit FTO2.
It has nothing to do
Good,
with.
good.
Yes.
It's just that I could not hear her clearly on some of that.
Yeah.
Great,
The
thank
time
you.
critical removal action was a time critical removal action in and of itself. It had
Right.
nothing to do with any of the other projects. Air Force was the lead agency. We did our job. We knew that the system was going to get overwhelmed. We took action.
Right.
Okay, and I have a request just to remind everyone who's joined us online to please mute yourselves. So again, to mute yourselves is *6, correct? If you're dialing by phone, and then you can use the mute function if you're connected by computer. Other questions on this presentation from the RAD members? Okay, we are, as Tim and I both look at our watches, we are 1 second off of the designated break time. So let me suggest that we move into a break. Let's see. So our break will be now for 10 minutes. So 6:20 now, and we'll come back at 6:30 and start up again. Thank you. On break. Again, let me jump in and make sure everyone can hear me. If I could, let me make sure everybody can hear me, please. I see a thumbs up there. Let me pause some conversations that are going on in the room and move to RAB member questions. So this would be just for any questions the RAB members may have, not necessarily specific to the presentation that was just given, but any other questions from the RAB members that we have right now. Yes, Kathy Westerbrot.
And I don't know if we've talked about this in the past, but I'm really interested in the budget of this project or this site and seeing the numbers and, you know, where this is spent and how much it's getting and all of that. Is there a place I can look for that?
You'll be seeing the action memorandum soon. So we're just finishing comments on that. So hopefully in the next week or so, we'll have that ready to go public. But right now we're looking at $6 million roughly for this whole project for the time critical removal action.
No, well, we moved past the time for, you
Oh.
said
Well,
questions about it.
it can certainly be about that presentation, but it also.
No,
can be
this is
broader.
just about our, you know, our site.
Oh, for this year? I think.
No, for, you know, historically and in the future, I mean, I feel like
That's a
there's
very
a
good
budget,
question.
right? Like, we're dealing with numbers and we're being asked to ask for money, and so.
That's where I
like
need the
to know.
core. So the contracting officer representative. So when Gordon joined me on the trip, he's the one that handles the money for us, right? Right now, we are waiting on a presidential budget to lock in what we have for this year. But as soon as we have everything, we will be moving forward. I don't know what we have for next year, but we will have money
How about historically, where could I find dollars?
historically.
Budgets for this project?
The fact sheets, you've already,
Oh, the fact sheets would have it because that's done by PA. They have that access.
Okay.
So yeah, let me see if I can get you an updated fact sheet, okay? Maybe
I mean,
that'll
if
help.
it's in the.
And if it's not updated, I'll see if I can get it
Well,
updated.
yeah, that's what I was
Well,
just
that's the
gonna
thing, is I
mention
can-
is that we used to get, at the beginning of a RAP, we used to get a colorful 2-page fact sheet that, and a big part of it was how much money's been spent, and how much money will it take to complete, okay? And we haven't been getting those the last 3 RAPs. But then, unbeknownst to any of us, all of a sudden what showed up on the AFCEG site was a different type of fact sheet that is a FAQ of facts. It was kind of, and it's brand new. I don't know if you
I
even knew about
haven't
it.
seen it, no.
I didn't know about it either. And one of the contractors must have come up with it.
Okay.
Um,
Wasn't one of mine, so it was probably PA.
Yeah, I can show it to you, but I think to answer the question, I think it would be very, very helpful to communicate those numbers of the historical, what's going to happen in the next year, 2 years, at least to cover the schedule we've been talking about, which is the RI finish. And that budget so that we know confidence that your management is getting you the money to meet those schedules that you're committing to. And if you can get your management to support that being shared with us each RAB. Or if it didn't change, then say, no, that last one is still accurate. It would be
I'll see
okay.
what I can do. I know that Corral put some numbers in his talks last year, and we'll see what we can do, because I'm sure there's a fact sheet out there that we can share.
Great.
Yes, let's go to Mr. Cummings first and then Mr. Stroud.
Thank you. It's just a quick question directed to Dr. Bartlett. Are you prepared to summarize what you see are the next steps for this site? What do you see
Yeah.
down the road?
So what we're doing right now is we've collected a lot of RI data. So we're analyzing that RI data to make sure that we have full capture. So if we don't have capture, then we need to step in and we need to do something to expand and make sure that we are not contaminating, Asable or the river, the Parks Marsh, the Van Yen Lake, So we're going for capture as well as pursuing the circle process. So remedial investigation and then feasibility study. And I'd like to start those feasibility studies as soon as we have enough data to support it.
Daniel, stop.
Yeah, my question deals with the health department, domestic well sampling. When might we expect those results of this latest round of domestic well sampling to be available online with the maps showing the locations where the earlier sampling was?
So maybe a question for Puneet Vij with Department of Health and Human Services. Puneet, were you able to hear that question? Let me just check in again with Puneet Vij. Okay, do we still have Puneet listed on the meeting? Yes. Okay, Puneet, we are not able to hear you right now, so just for the meeting support folks, can you please make sure Puneet is unmuted, and then Puneet, you might need to confirm that you are as well. So Puneet, are you with us? Okay, well, the technology gremlins have fit in there.
I can provide some, and then we can follow up with Puneet. Well, Puneet provides the numbers, so I know it was hard to hear him, but so he provides the numbers of the total wells tested and then which ones are above the values, which may or may not be helpful. We are in the process of putting together, we've talked about putting together some maps. They'll likely be an Eagle output based on that residential well sampling, but we're still in the process of verifying some of the residential well coordinate locations. And so that's been a problem kind of moving forward. We will probably just give the general type map because it is, there are privacy issues with, actually putting out a table with those results. But yeah, that's on our radar. I can't really give you a time frame right now on when that'll be done, but we have been working kind of the pieces to put that together, more or less. And we can get back to you on a time frame. I just don't want to provide something that's completely made up at this time. Yes. Yes. Yep.
Thank you for the question, sir. Any other questions?
Hi, this is Puneet. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. Somehow that unmute button was not there, so I was not able to unmute myself. So the 2 rounds of sampling, we have the data, and then we provided the data to Eagle, and I agree with what Beth mentioned. And if you I have those figures, I can show it in maybe in the next meeting. This is how the first round and this is how the second round is looking.
So it sounds like Puneet's available to share figures at the next meeting. I think that was your suggestion, Puneet. Is that right?
Yes, I can use those figures in my presentation.
For the next community town hall.
I'm talking about the next town hall.
19 wells are tested high. Are they all in a cluster in one place, or are they spread out in different locations? You have no idea.
They are spread out in different locations, but yes, definitely. I agree with you. I get your point. So I can put together a figure and I can show it in the next town hall again.
So that would be the next town hall, the Eagle Town.
The Empire Town Hall, right?
Yes.
And then that'll be available online afterward too, if you don't make the meeting.
Yes.
And Puneet, thank you for hanging in there with the technology. We appreciate your patience.
No problem. Thank you.
And while we're talking to folks on the line, let me just check in with Denise Bryan, Jess Steunenbeck. Do y'all have any questions that you'd like to pose?
Thank you very much. I do not have any questions.
Okay, thanks. All right, well, let's see if there are other questions, other discussion from Brad members. Go ahead, Arnie.
Regarding the RI work plan, some of us over the last few years have been raising a concern that off-base has been used too extensively by the Air Force. And we're really happy that you've extended that somewhat, but the area of Clark's Marsh and the state forest, I forget the name of the the marsh there. And the plumes that leave the base, all the way from the wastewater treatment plant to FTO2 to OT16, moving to the east, those plumes, all the way to the Osable River. Where is that being discussed in writing as part of some investigation all the way to Osable River? And second part of that is the concept in CERCLA of a secondary or a supplemental source of PFAS created by the original, but now it's in a place where it is disconnected from the original, and it is a source of unto itself that will last a lot longer than the plume going into FTO2.
So we're doing the remedial investigation right now. We're collecting a lot of data. We're tracing out where the plumes are, and we're using that to make data-driven decisions. That's what we're doing, Arnie.
So you feel you do not have enough information about the plumes, including the data that the state sent to you over a year ago, to question or at least identify that there is a possibility that the marsh is going to be contaminating and polluting the Osable River longer than you could ever clean up by FTO2.
So what you're asking, if I'm getting correct,
okay,
is you're asking if what's already down on Forest Service land is continuing to go forward, and if there's nothing we can do. We're trying to do stuff. We're working with Startup ESTCP to try and put something on 3 pipes to make sure that we're getting passive treatment. If that works, then maybe we can use that somewhere else as well. We're working with, we're looking at all of our resources. And
that's great, but there's nothing on a map that shows that you're doing that shows that there's an operational unit or a COQ, whatever you renumbered the contamination sites last year. And creating an identification, here's an area where the data from the state shows that is a secondary source, and therefore give it a designation, and then you can start picking that apart.
We're still delineating the plumes, but that doesn't mean that we're looking at all the data we have as we have it. We've got the data from the state. We've got a lot of data that we've collected recently, and I'm pushing these guys every day to collect more and get more geoprobes up here to punch more holes in the ground and get more soil and more water and everything else. We are going, as we get the data, that's how we scope the projects. As we scope the projects, that's how I communicate to you guys. This is what I'm thinking. What do you guys think?
So am I accurate in saying that if you've got the data, you're analyzing the data, it sounds like you have not analyzed the state data that they've been taking the last 6 years.
We have.
So do you have any data to indicate that the GSI 12 part per trillion or greater is going to the Osable River? Are you confident that that is happening or not happening?
So the offsite data right now is insufficient to define contamination.
Insufficient?
Insufficient. We don't have enough data at this point in time to define it. Sorry, I'm getting phone a friend. They're giving me the answers. I'm relaying them to you. I have an amazing team. All I can tell you is we have an all-star team on this. So yes, we do not currently have the information to answer that question.
So is it a data gap identified in the RI?
It's a data gap that's being filled in the RI by the RI.
Right.
But
The answer is
you have to
yes.
start by
Arnie.
identifying
Yes.
and listing a gap
It is discussed in the RI work plan.
as
Yes.
a gap.
Yes.
And we
Have
are
you seen
working.
that?
I don't remember off the top of my head if it's labeled a data gap, but I know that they are planning monitoring wells south of, I believe it's.
The VAS's, the vast monitoring wells that were just published in a map that was shared with us last month, have them just below the boundary into Clark's Marsh. It's only about halfway to this.
Let me just jump in real quick and turn to Dr. Wiley for a response.
Yes, those are initial points. Those are not our step outs. That's where we start. And then if we find contamination, we step out. We're following the same approach that we did for soil, the same approach. It's a triad approach. You know, EPA guidance.
Okay. Can I ask for an action item that the data gap, highlight where that is in the RI work plan right now, so that we're all talking about the same animal of where we are in the process? Can that be done? Regarding Clark's Marsh, the other marshes, the wastewater treatment plant plumes, and the Oswego River, just in that.
I don't quite understand what you're asking for.
I have not seen it. You say you think it's there, you've seen some discussion, and Paul is saying it's in there. And so we've got three interpretations of what it is and where it is.
So Beth, I think you're about to make a comment.
Yeah, I don't necessarily know if it was clearly identified as a data gap, what exactly you're talking about, but from my recollection, the last iteration of the remedial investigation work plan did have monitoring wells south of Clark's Marsh. I can't remember if I'm remembering the most recent plan or not, but so that data would help fill exactly what you're asking for. So it's filling that data gap, but I can't say that the data gap is clearly defined.
But it's more than just what's in Clark's Marsh. It's what's then further going into the Oswego River. That is a data gap, the way you're talking about.
We go where the data takes us. And that's, I mean, that's the monitoring wells that you're talking about down by the Oswego River.
Yeah, they're
So,
between
yeah.
Clark's Marsh and the
Yeah.
Oswego, based on my
We go where the
recollection.
data takes us. And right now we have planned wells for down by the Oswego.
You do?
We do.
And that's shown on a map in the work plan?
It is.
In the work plan, yes. Not in the initial VAS locations that you guys have seen, but in the work plan that
We
we're
haven't
currently.
gone to the step of putting in monitoring wells yet.
Can the three of you highlight page numbers of where that is so that the rest of us
The
can?
work plan's not out yet, Arnie, that's the problem, we're in draft. So that's going to try and get me comments by the end of the month, first week of December at the latest, right? We're going to, as an Air Force team, take those into consideration, we're going to go through all of them, do what we can within policy and guidance. We'll go back to Eagle or we'll meet together and we'll decide a path forward together. That's what we can do. We can't share a draft document. That's not how things are done.
I don't need the draft document. I want just the statement that that topic all the way to Oswego River is in the RI plan. It's not an addendum to the
It's
RI.
not an addendum. It is
Okay.
there. It's there presently. We
Okay.
have wells all along the boundary. And we're working with Forest Service to get the access to be able to do that work, so. That's what we're doing.
Because there's only 2 years left of the RI.
So let me
We're gonna
just
get
check
them
to
before
see if there are other questions the RAD members have. Yes. go ahead.
It's related to the same thing. When is the RI work plan going to be released to the public?
Right.
As soon as possible. The goal is before March when we start the next field season. So what was it, 198 comments is what we got, and 200 rough, okay.
Yeah, I don't think there were that many, but okay.
So, there were a lot of comments. So
There
we
were.
decided to address it by media so we could move into field season. Otherwise, we would have lost this entire field season. We would have made no progress whatsoever. So groundwater, we could agree on, right? We moved forward on groundwater. Soil, we had about 90% agreement. We moved forward on soil. Bass, we're probably closer to 70% agreement. We moved forward on bass. Now we're getting to the point that we need to actually look at what we had. We're not going to finish the bass sampling this season, even though Paula, you didn't hear me say that. We're going to keep pushing, we're going to get it done, right? Sorry, but yeah, no, these guys have to deal with me going more, always. And I push them hard. And I appreciate the fact that they stick it out and they continue. Paula is extremely appreciated, as well as the rest of the Aerostar team and all the subcontractors that have stepped in to pick up the slack. So they're doing a great job and great work. So we are continuing to move forward step by step by step. We will have some time to get that work plan finalized between Beth's team and our team, Air Force team. And then hopefully we'll be sharing that and everybody can tell us, you know, if we miss something, let us know if we miss something, because it's still a fluid process. We're not done. So, and we've got a whole nother field season ahead of us.
By the next rep, you think?
Not by the next wrap. I said by March.
I didn't
February's
hear
the
that. You
next
turned to
round.
him and I didn't hear that. By
Yeah.
March, for the work plan.
For the work plan, that's the goal, is March. Because March, April, we should be back in the field again. If the field season cooperates, which we've had really. good
That
field
gives you
seasons.
less than a year to do the sampling to fill those gaps. And, okay,
We're continuing forward. I mean, we've already taken 1,000+ samples, well, 1,000, over 1,000 samples in just soil alone. 100 something in Bass, 90 something in 96 in groundwater, so.
So Mark, does that address the question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
I have a quick comment on that.
Go ahead.
So the only other issue that would come up with that would be, I know, my understanding is Forest Service is also reviewing the plan, and so I'm not sure how that will play into these plans. Yep.
Yeah, so as Jesse has questions and comments, she reaches out as well, and we talk, and same with Ben. So all of us are talking, and they've actually helped a lot with the development of the risk assessment work plan as well as the RI work plan. So I'm grateful for that collaboration.
And Jesse Steunenbeck, anything you would like to add on that? Other questions from the RAD members?
Just a quick question, and I was wondering, what is the status of the conflict negotiations, whatever we want to label it as, between the Air Force and the Forestry Service regarding Collects Marsh?
It's much bigger than that. We're talking about what's actually happening at a DOD and USDA level for solution, and our SESs at the Forest Service as well as with the Air Force are involved in trying to move our projects forward. So we have good support on our team to try and come up with something that we can work with and move everything forward. And we had some ideas today. We met this morning and I think we're going to make some progress. So I'm optimistic. We have a great relationship with the local crew.
All right. Any time frame? Something we might be able to talk
Before
about?
next field season. That is the goal for everything right now. This field season is about over. I don't want to say that too loud. My contractors might hear you. But yeah, so before next field season. I push it hard, I'm sorry.
And just for the meeting support staff, Jesse Steunenbeck is not able to mute or unmute herself. So if you could see if you could assist her with that. Other questions from the RAD members?
Can I throw out one? And that is regarding the ARARs and the 5 new groundwater criteria. For both Beth and Catherine, is there a critical path that has to be settled so that it does not slow down your RI?
Where the forest sits? Sorry, you talking about?
No.
Wait, say it
No.
again. Sorry, I missed.
I think he's talking about the ARARs and as they relate to going forward
Oh, for
and
the
what you're
I-
finally going to comply with.
Because what we learned last
For the
meeting
final,
was
we're
that
not
the
there.
new 5 PFASs has not been finalized, according to the Air Force, has not been promulgated so that you will accept them as an ARAR. Is
So-
that still true? Or
We're
has that
not
been
to
fixed?
that point yet, Arnie. That's, so, sorry, I'm confusing multiple things going on at once. So right now, we are only at the RI stage. We have an interim remedial action. Keyword is interim.
Right.
It is only for that pump and treat system that is in place, that localized effort. It is interim. That's what those errors are for. Now, those give us a good starting point for when we actually finish the FS and the PP rod. Those will be written into that rod for the full site. If I get my way, hopefully we can push to do FTO2 sooner because we have a lot of data now. We know what we're doing out there. So if we could actually start moving that site a little bit further and faster, we might have a rod in place at some point in time in the next couple of years. We'll see. It's going to take a lot of work on my best part, as well as everybody else's. It's doable.
Arnie and Bill, does that address the question?
Did for me.
All right. Any other questions from the RAD members right now? Okay, we're a few minutes ahead of schedule, but just want to check in once again with those who are on the phone, the RAD members, Denise Bryant, Penny Vidge, Jesse Steunenbeck. Anything you'd like to add?
This is Denise. I do not have any additional updates or comments.
Thanks, Denise.
This is Jesse. I don't have anything either.
Okay, thank you, and I appreciate your patience with the technology, Jesse.
I don't have anything either.
Thanks, Penny. Okay, well, let's advance the slide if we could, and we'll move into the public comment portion of the meeting. So the RAD members have had the opportunity to engage in some discussion about the presentation and other more general matters. So now we're opening the floor to members of the public who would like to address the RAD. Let's see, we'll start with those who are, I'll actually start with a question that was posed online from Jennifer Hill, and then I'll turn to those who are in person. And when we do in-person public comments, I'll ask that you come up to this microphone right here, being pointed up, and make your comments there. Get real close to that microphone so we can hear you. Before turning to Jennifer Hill, do we have a?
So Jennifer Hill said her comment was addressed by Dr. Harley.
Got it. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, well, so then let me start off with public comments from those who are here in person. So is there anyone here who would like to make a 3-minute comment to the rep? Yes, sir. Please come on up. If you would like to, please share your name and just go ahead and make a comment.
Yeah, my name is Bill Palmer. I'm an Oscoda Township trustee. And several years ago, the Air Force approached me to put a test well on my property. And they said at the time they wanted to put 3 or 4 more. I live on Vannet Lake along the west shore. And I know they put one at Ratliff Park on my property. So I'm assuming they put 2 more somewhere near me. I got a call from a resident here in Oscoda that lives down on the south end of the lake by the dam. And he got a letter from the Air Force wanting to know if he could have permission to put a test well there. So I was just curious what the plan is for the Air Force to put more of these test wells along the west shore of Vannet Lake or other areas. So they can let this resident know what the purpose of that is.
Thanks, Bill. That's great. Yes, I meant to mention that earlier. So we have a lot of rights of entry out there right now so that we can actually delineate the plumes. And that allows us to move forward. And right now we're moving forward in vertical aquifer sampling, which is a well that, well, we punch a hole in the ground. We take samples on our way down. We collect water at the water table all the way down to the confining clay layer. And then we go ahead and we pull out all the tooling and we seal that well up. So it's no longer there. We do what we need to do. We also have some permanent wells that will come in the future that we will be asking for access for. And that access is extremely important to understanding where we have contamination and where we need to take action. So I think those that actually have already signed access agreements with us and helped the Air Force. And I ask, that you please at least consider it because it'll make remediation so much better if we all do it together. As far as I know that you have a well that's been sitting there and we do need to look into whether or not we need that well. And if we don't need it anymore, we do need to abandon it. So that is something that I know we've talked about previously. Okay.
And I guess my question was only one resident that contacted me. I was just wondering how many others you were anticipating putting in along the lake, and if they were all on the west side or if there going to be some on the east side as well.
So they're all on the west side because we're stepping out from where we currently are, right? And we're trying to understand the plumes. There's several of them. And I'm trying to remember how many letters we've actually sent out. We've sent out quite a few. We've had 4 come back that are, we have 4 rights of entry in place right now. And then we've had 3 people tell us that there's no way that they're going to let us access their land. And then we've had some ask, well, if we give you access, can you abandon these other ones that were from the previous work? So we're working on that and working our way through. Paula, do you have a rough estimate of how many we have out there or have the total number?
Yeah, I don't have the exact number right off the top of my head, but it's around, we've sent out about 20 so far. And then depending on if we get a positive response or a negative response, then other letters will go out in adjacent areas. So like Catherine said, we're doing vast locations. We've got monitoring wells that we're going to install. So we're trying to get all of our access agreements, again, working through the winter when we kind of have some downtime from field work to get all of the access agreements in place. So the end number will vary how many actually went out depending on how many people give us permission or deny permission. And some of the different things that we're trying to do. Initially, we wanted to try to keep everything in the right of way as best we could because we do have an agreement with the county to do work in the right of way. But there could be instances where we may need access to someone's property while we're installing something. We just want to make sure it's okay if, you know, there's a truck or something parked on, you know, you're in your driveway or something for a little while we're doing that. So that number will be fluid, and we'll be happy to provide that number because we'll have more information definitely about the next RAB meeting on who has given us permission and who hasn't, and the total number that have gone out. Okay. Sure.
All right. Thank you. Are there other public comments from those who are with us here in person?
Hello. I'm Chris Coulon. I live in Oscoda, actually Osable Township, and I wanted to make you aware of the foam on Lake Huron that we're seeing. This picture I took about 3 miles south of the river. This just shows, I call it a foam map because it's not like level, it's fluffed up, floating on the lake, and it's all throughout this area, but this is the largest concentration. It's bright white foam. I think it's pretty safe to say it's not natural, but we would like to have it tested. So this was on October 6th. And then we had another event that was at the mouth of the river that was quite large. And that was on October 28th. We've asked the state to do testing of the foam, and they say they will not do that because what are we gonna do if we find out that it is something? Is basically, why do we wanna know if we can't do anything about it? Well, I don't buy that argument. I don't buy that argument with monitoring, with health monitoring in our blood. And we're hearing the same thing again about the foam. So one way or another, we're gonna get this tested. This is about a mile from the municipal water intake onshore. Yesterday, there was foam on Tawas Bay. The state says, oh, that's probably from another source. Well, I'm doubtful. No other place around here has this stuff. So we need to test these events. And we're gonna keep on bringing it up until we get it tested. And we're working on doing that independently. However, we would appreciate it if the
Let me
state.
pause the conversation here if I could, Bill, if we could pause real quick. Ms. Coulon, go ahead.
Yeah, we would appreciate if the state would cooperate and do at least some testing of these events. This happens on our public beach in the downtown area. This happens at 3 Mile, which is north of town, and both of those are actually north of the river. So we don't know what's going on, but these things are happening and people are seeing this. Children are playing in this. Birds are migrating through this. And pets are playing in this. It's just, we have to do something about this. And this has been happening since, I think the first time I saw it was in 2000, what was it, 16 or 17. And this year has been a particularly bad year. I see it nearly every day, not to this degree, but I see some foam that you can definitely tell the characteristics are there. The way it clumps, the way it gathers, how it's spread out, the wind conditions, and all of that. We have records. The state asked, we reported it, we've reported it, we reported. We're gonna keep reporting it, I guess, but they're not doing anything about it. We want to know what's going on. And it's gotta be coming from the base, and it's coming from the river out into the lake. And we know that. And I guess you have to get all your data to say, yes, that's true, but it's true. And I just want everybody to know and be aware of this situation that we're seeing here in Oscoda. This is what it looks like.
I appreciate you bringing it up. So there are more sources than just AFFF, and hopefully everybody knows that. We do have septic systems out there, and septic systems.
But that's my argument for testing. Test.
And that's a
Please.
reason to, if we do test, to make sure we're testing for other tracers like caffeine and pesticides and other
Whatever.
things that could be a
As
source.
long as you test it for PFAS, we're happy. Yep.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and are there other public comments from those who are with us here in person? Okay, let me just check with the meeting staff to see if we have anyone who is wishing to make a comment who's joined us online. If you do, if you would like to make a comment, you've joined us online, please raise your hand. And again, if you've dialed in via phone, you can hit *9. So let's see, do we have anybody listed? Not currently, okay. All right. We'll give that a few minutes for that time lag that is required sometimes to come off mute, raise hands, *9, and so on. Let me just check in again. Do we have others here in person who would like to make a comment?
I had a quick one to Chris's to augment what Chris just said. I've got a question for Catherine in the Air Force. Do you have any plans, or have you already done but not published, any PFAS, the whole spectrum, signature of your samples that you've taken of groundwater or surface water, characterization of the PFAS breakdowns of different types? 80% is PFAS, 10% is PFOA, that kind of split, because other bases have been doing that in the last 2 years, and there's CERT-up studies to show how that can be done. So is this team doing something like that?
That is something that we have been working on. That is correct. Yes.
Working on
So,
means,
I've got Dr. Hunter Anderson looking at that, him and Colin have been looking at all the data as it's collected, both sides of the lake, what Eagles provided, what we have. We've been looking at the data and looking at what the signatures are for the Air Force compounds based off the solutions that we know existed,
looking at data from your samples is what you're saying?
as well as the Eagle samples, correct?
And do you have a potential release or discussion of some of that with us?
No, so as soon as Dr. Anderson finishes his analysis, he will share it with the group. We will bring him to town.
And part B is he or someone helping to pull together what other sites are doing in that topic so that we can learn from them? Because identifying the sources, we want to know more than just, well, there's septic systems out there. We want as much science that can be put to this issue, because we're standing out like a sore thumb on this foam issue.
We are working with CERT-up, we are working with the STCP, we are working to make sure we're collecting the data that we need to advance the projects and the programs. And hopefully, I mean, the small studies that we do are based on larger studies that have already been done. So we're going to get there. We're not there yet, but we're going to get there.
Can he share at least the studies that he's identified so that we can talk to our colleagues at other RAB sites or other DOD sites? Can you do that much?
When we get there, we're not there yet.
Just what studies he's compiled that he's looking at? He can't share that?
I can ask.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments at the moment? Okay, well, so if we could, let's go ahead and advance the slide, I think, to possibly. Yeah, let's go to the next one if we could. So let me just, before moving into concluding remarks and so on, just check in to see how y'all would like to use the remaining time that we had set aside. It's a little bit after 7:10 right now. We've made it through the agenda with the exception of just concluding remarks. How would you like to proceed? Shall we go ahead and wrap up, or is there any further discussion that would be of benefit? I heard a yes.
I'm not opposed to more discussion if people have questions and we have the people here to answer those questions or discuss them.
Sure.
I would certainly open it up for as long as those questions remain.
Great. Well, good. Well, what questions do come to mind?
Are there any questions? If there aren't any questions, then we could go back to posters or, you know, just continue the conversation and in the online part.
Yeah, so just confirming no hands raised from anyone online, correct? Okay, great. All right, well, so before, I think the suggestion was perhaps after we address any questions there are, we could kind of continue that poster discussion just in small groups and so on. Any questions before we do that?
Tim?
Yes.
The posters, they're great, and they were last time too. Can the Air Force give us a high-quality photo of each of them so that we can put it in the IR and we can all have our own copy of it?
They will be posted on the RAB website as soon, just like the last time. They're all up there from the last time.
But not as a PDF. PDF is not going to do it for us. It's too much detail. It's got to
Those
be
were
a
printed from
JPEG.
PD Those were printed from PDF.
But they're blown up quite. Okay.
No,
Okay.
the same. We put up the exact same thing we printed them from. So we're going to do the same thing again unless for some reason that doesn't work. I mean, we can take a picture but make you.
If we can read the fine print, it'll work.
Yeah,
All is coming.
Yeah, I think the problem, Marty, is when we print
Those posters, they are designed to be those large posters. So when we make a PDF and you try to print it, it doesn't,
No,
because it shrinks
exactly.
them down. So yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. So
But I
just
think-
from there, they don't have a printer that can print them to the size that they are meant
Not
to
that
be
big.
printed.
but they could if we take the same files that we put out here.
We can we can
put those directly
redo them.
on there.
We can reduce those, but there is, you know, and one of the reasons that we make them big is because there is a lot of data on them.
Right.
So it's a challenge to get them to a size that is printable, that most people have 11 by 17 or 8.5 by 11.
I'd be willing to
That's a
bet if you
challenge.
took the PDF that you used to print those and convert it to a JPEG, save it as a JPEG, and check the quality of it. It's got to be a high definition JPEG though.
Right, but when you print it off on an 8.5 by 11, there is so much information on there, you're still not going to be able to
So
read it. But
we are-
I'll give you a JPEG.
Okay.
We are fortunate
That's fine.
to have at the back, we got like 6 big minds related to audio visual stuff. So I would suggest that the two of y'all maybe connect on that topic with some of the folks who have been supporting this meeting as well. Any other questions before we break and move to poster session discussions? I did capture a number of action items. One, send the Michigan Attorney General's letter about applicable or relevant and appropriate requirements to the RAB members with that in place. To advise RAB members when Michigan Eagle will provide comments to the Air Force concerning recent BCT meeting minutes with Beth as well. Number 3, determine whether BCT meetings can be transcribed. Consider the best process by which to release BCT meeting minutes and related information in a timely fashion. I assume that
Assigned
might
to
be
me.
with you, Dr. Farley. And provide updated Wurtsmith fact sheets to RAB members, include information about budget if possible with Dr.
That's
Farley.
me.
Okay, well, there will be follow-on discussion. Let me just pause the discussions that we do have ongoing in the audience real quick to make sure we don't pick those up on the mics. There will be discussions between the co-chairs as you typically do after the meeting, I believe. And just turn to y'all for any closing comments.
Well, before I give a closing comment, Beth sent an email around that had the AG's letter in it. Is that it? So that action item is already taken care of.
Really, man.
Good work. Your
Close in
best.
record time.
That one was fast.
It's impressive.
Great. Well, thank you. Appreciate that. Okay. We're good. Well, Mark, would you like to start us off?
I'd like to thank everybody for coming. I think we've learned a fair amount about what's going on. I know in my mind, I have more questions based on what we've seen tonight. And I will be following that up between now and the next RAB meeting and also at the next RAB meeting. So look forward to discussions.
Dr. Riley?
I'd just like to thank absolutely everybody for being here, for being present, for helping with communication, for working this project together. As I provide data, I appreciate the feedback that some of you have provided back, and I want to keep the lines of communication open. So as you have questions, please reach out. Let's keep it going.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you to those who have attended in whatever format you attended, and we are adjourned for the evening. Have a good